How are you guys doing? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So this is Mr. Wilfred, and we're going to talk about Math 8 concepts. So right now we're dealing with lesson 8.3a. 8.3a is what we're looking at. So if you don't mind, if you have the worksheet printed out, awesome. If you want to follow online with me, that's fine as well. Remember, at the top of every worksheet, there will be a code over here. This worksheet doesn't have it, but it will soon. And you'll be able to scan it, and it'll come right to this video to be able to walk you through how to complete these assignments. Now, every activity that we do does come from one before, so you'll see something called bell work. That bell work is from the lesson prior. So good morning, students, or good afternoon. What I want us to do is look at strange lines. And now, this is not brand new to us. When we was dealing with graphing lines, we talked about these strange lines, vertical and horizontal. But I believe in this unit of transformations, especially on the reflection unit, reflection transformation we're working on, we need to go back and refresh ourselves just a little bit, because we're going to reflect over these horizontal and vertical lines as points of reflection or lines of reflection. And I want you to recognize, well, when it says over the line y equals 2, or over the line, reflect over the line x equals -3, we need to know, okay, well, what does that line look like? So I want to take a second to just jump back to look back at it. But prior to us jumping back, I want you to do the bell work, which is what we did yesterday, which is reflecting a point over the x-axis and over the y-axis. If you need a second right now, pause the video, try to tackle the bell work on your own, and I'm going to give you a second to do that. If you need to, you can always pause it and come back to this video, come back to the worksheet as you go and complete the last worksheet, 8.3, and then you'll have an understanding of how to complete 8.3a, okay? Pause it now. All right, so I hope you was able to pause it. I hope you was able to answer the bell work questions, both A and B. What we need to do is we need to reflect this point -3,5 and this point 3,6, both over the x-axis and over the y-axis. Now, as I showed you yesterday, right, we talked about reflection. We talked about reflecting over these two axes. Now, if you remember the vertical line, right, that looks something like this, this is known as our y-axis, right? This is known as our y-axis, and you'll always see a little y at the top of most graphs, indicating that that's the y-axis. The vertical, the horizontal line on the graph, right? The horizontal line on the graph, this is our x-axis, right? This is our x-axis. What we want to do is, we're talking about taking a point, right? So let me actually give colors to these points that are reflective of almost where they are. Right, we got -3,5, right? -3 and 5 is like right up here somewhere. Let's say it's right here, and I use yellow, and I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to see it, kinda. So let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of yellow. Let's use black for this one. -3,5. That's right around here, right? That's -3,5. Okay. I need to reflect that point over the x-axis and then over the y-axis. Now, it's one at a time. So if I reflect it over the x-axis, I know it needs to go down here somewhere. Right? What does that mean? Did the x change at all? Did it come over here? No, the x has not changed. So that means that the x point should be the same. Whenever we reflect over the x stays the same. Okay? That's -3. However, when I moved it down here somewhere, and let's call this point A, right? Because it is the bell work A, right? And this will become A prime right here, down here. That would be A prime. Okay? You will see it's down here. Now, because it's down there, notice that the y went from being positive to being negative. So that would negate whatever the y was. So instead of it being a +5, it would end up becoming a -5. So that's what it looks like if we reflected it over the x. Now, if we reflected it over the y, you would notice that the point comes over here. Let's call this A double prime. Okay? A double prime. And you would notice that the y actually stays the same. It stays up here, but the x is the one that's changing sign. So y would stay the same, and x would be the one that's changing signs. Okay, so hold on. Let's stop this. And what we ended up getting is we got a +3, right? Because it's the negative times a negative gives us a +3, right? And then we also have this +5 because y does not change, right? Y stays the same. So this is what our point looks like. Now, if you did B, knowing these rules, you should be able to recognize, okay, well, X doesn't change, right? X doesn't change for the reflecting over the X axis. So this point here should be 3, comma, negative 6, right? Right, 3 comma negative 6. That's what this point is, 3 comma negative. Whereas this one on the bottom, the y stays the same, but the x changes. So the x was originally positive. In this case, now x is going to be negative, okay? Give me one more second. So negative 3. And then our y stays the same, which is 6, right? So it is a 6. So let me put a comma here somewhere. Give me a second. Okay. So this is what our 2 points would look like in our bell work, right? So we have, when you reflect it over the x, x stays the same, y changes. When you reflect it over the y, y stays the same, but x changes. And when we talk about change, we're talking about inverse. We're talking about how that affects the actual number. If it was a positive, it turns negative. If it was a negative, it turns positive, okay? We're going to review how to identify horizontal and vertical lines today, right? Our goal is to read the graphs. You should also be able to be familiar with graphing them. Now, you can go back on Delta Math and practice some of the linear equations that we had to graph, and some of them were graphing these unusual ones, which we call them strange lines, vertical and horizontal ones. But let's go through it. We're going to model it. We've done this activity before, so it's not brand new, but I do need you to get familiar with it before we dive into what we're doing tomorrow. All right? So looking at the modeling section here, right? I'm going to clear the text, right? Clear the drawings, right? Looking at the modeling section here, it says shown below are a horizontal and a vertical line. Right, this one is horizontal, this one is vertical, as you can see which box are underneath each one, right? The horizontal line, the vertical line, okay? Write down 2 coordinates on the horizontal line, all right? So take a second to write down 2 coordinates that's on this horizontal line, on this line up here, right? Maybe I should draw a color on it, that way you'll see it. Let's make that one orange, right? So on this vertical line right here, horizontal line, I apologize. On that horizontal line, that orange line, write down 2 points, right? Also on this vertical line, write down 2 points on this line as well. If you remember when we did this in class, you'll remember how we did it and also why we did it, right? So if you have identified 2 points, let's say, for example, you've identified 2 coordinates up there. You identified the coordinate, let's say you did -2, 4, right? Let's say you did -2, 4. And let's say the other coordinate that you've identified was, or let me just use the actual dots that's up there. That's nice. Let me use the dots that's there. -3, 4. And see if I can move this out the way. This is in my way. There it is right there. Boom. Awesome. Give me a chance to make my own again, so whatever. All right. And let's say you also did 2, 4, 5, 4. So 5, 4, right? Let's say these were the 2 that you wrote. Awesome, beautiful, right? Those are 2 points. What about the 2 that's on the vertical line? Let's say you picked, +2, 4. And let's say you also picked +2, -1, right? Something like this. These are those points that are there for you, right? The next thing is this. When you look at these 2 points, let's start with the horizontal line. When you look at those 2 points, what do they share in common? What do they have in common? They have, both of them have this 4, that 4 in common. Now, if you remember our coordinates, right? Our coordinates are always x, y. So it's always x, y, right? So x, y, x, y. What do they have in common here? They both have y in common. They both have y being 4. They both have y in common, which is 4, right? Which is 4. And if you want to write which is 4, I'm going to write it here. Okay. They both have y in common, which is 4. And over here, if I look at this section over here, I'll be able to say, okay, well, what do these 2 have in common? They both have x in common. X in common, which in this case is, 2. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that my equation for this line is x equals 2. And my equation over here for this line is y equals 4. Now, that's us by looking at the points, we can identify these equations. If you were to recognize that if I go up on y, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that all of these are up here, all these points have y equal 4, then that means that's y equals 4. Whenever you see something starting with y equals, that's horizontal. Whenever you see something starting with x equals, that's a vertical line. Right now, our goal is to identify which equations are what. So in this case, we see a vertical line. We need to say, okay, what are the 2 points that are there? The 2 points are 2, 4, 2, -1. What do they both have in common? They both have x equaling 2. That means x equals 2. Okay, this is one way of looking at it. I want you to get better at it. So what I want you to do is I'm going to clear the text, copy down what you need to copy down. All right. Okay, I want you to go and practice, make sure you can identify the equations. If you go to the next page, you'll see that there's a little bit more here for you, talking about vertical, horizontal lines, right? There's some examples. I believe that these 2 equations are missing, but I think they're on the actual worksheet. I'm gonna double check to make sure they are. And then you can see a number of examples that I want you to write the equations for. For exercise number 2, what is the equation for this one, right? It's a vertical line, right? Vertical line means that it starts with what? X or Y. Then go back up on your notes. Look back at your notes. Vertical line, right? That vertical line is the one that goes up and down, right? If you don't know that, I would indicate it, right? Or go back to the page before it, right? Vertical line is like that. Horizontal line looks like this, right? So when I see a vertical line, I want to say, okay, that starts with X equals. So when I go to write my answer for this one, I'm going to write my answer starting off with X equals. When I write my answer for this one, X equals. Write my answer for this one, Y equals. Now, it's tough because it's like, well, what line am I looking at? Make sure you pay attention to what the axes are. This one's the x-axis, that one's the y-axis, so you're identifying this line. X-axis, y-axis, so you're identifying this line. Y-axis, x-axis, so you're identifying this line, okay? So just be very careful as you read them. Even if I was able to make them a different color, it probably wouldn't print out a different color for you. So just do your best to identify which line you're actually looking at. Complete this to the best of your ability, and then once again, take pictures as you guys have been doing, upload them onto Google Classroom. If you have any questions, remember on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I am available to talk with you, to try to help you, walk you through it. I know it's a new experience for all of us, but please reach out to me if you have any questions at all. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Pause the video if you need it to go back and watch whatever you need to watch. Until next time, have a great day, guys.